Right.
That's wonderful. So please, Guido, go ahead.
So yeah, welcome everybody to our webinar on mastering enterprise AI, streamlining your business processes. Today, Marcel and I, we're going to talk about how you can actually implement AI in businesses, because there is a huge difference between well, simply using it to actually using it in enterprise. This comes from compliance, quality level, and everything. And this is what we're gonna get deep in it. But before we start, I would like just to give you like a really short introduction on who we are for everybody who doesn't know us. So your main speaker today will be Marcel. Marcel is the director of the Center for Deep Tech Innovation. He actually already did his PhD a few years back in trust-aware business processes with focus on distributed ledger systems. Worked in well, industry for Siemens, Deutsche Telekom, and also in academia for TU Berlin, Fraunhofer, Institute USA, and Universidad Lisboa. And Marcel, for his part, is an expert in blockchain and AI. Actually, an expert in AI not since last year. So he's an expert in AI since 2014, has been working on it for quite a time. And I'm sorry, I have to mute.
You have to mute somebody.
Okay, I already did.
Who it is. Okay. Folks, mute yourself if you're not.
Got it. And Marcel is the founder of entAIngine,
yes,
a platform we're going to talk about later.
And with me is Guido. It's Guido. If you introduce me, I will introduce you, Guido.
Perfect.
With me is Guido. He is, if I'm more on the technical side, Guido is more on the business side. I have currently finalizing a PhD in DLT-based business models, and that's a little bit on what is focused with us with the Center for Deep Tech Innovation is also at the moment. Guido has worked in a range of different fields in carbon offsetting and CSR auditing, but also in academia, and he's a mentor in several programs in the blockchain space right now, and is doing enterprise AI with us here today. And yeah, good knowledge in innovation management, which is something that we will talk on an organizational level about a very high level in the end. But today it's really about what is enterprise AI, how do we do enterprise AI, what makes it so different from just having ChatGPT next to you working. Guido, back to you.
So basically to us, our team consists of 7 PhD level consultants. The level comes from my side, so 6 people with an actual PhD and myself, and another 10 full stack developers and data scientists. So this is like our manpower, which we have to address kind of different topics, starting from blockchain, AI, also climate tech and IoT being the 4 technologies we're focused and we have our expertise on. Yeah, and basically with regards to AI and our platform, we have 2 programs or 2 offers that we focus on right now, being the Enterprise Gen AI Jumpstart program and the Sparrings Partner, which are the 2 programs we want to well, explain and present to you a little bit later on. But first, this webinar is going to be about getting you the information you need for enterprise AI, so we could cut this all as short as possible, and we'll start right into the part you're all here for.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Guido. We are going to start today with a little bit of a quick introduction about what is generally the difference between we are using Gen AI to do CAD photos and we are using it for enterprise to create value in business processes. Of course, the one builds on top of the other, but you need quite a little bit more of ingredients to actually make it work in enterprises. We are talking about value creation processes. Afterwards, we are going to talk a little bit about enterprise architectures. And Ryan, I hope we can answer your question a little bit on AI models and interoperability between open source AI models like Llama. LangChain is also one of the things that is, of course, in that category. And in the end, we will shortly talk about our roadmap on innovation management on organizational perspective, but not too deep on the organization level. And the end to have in the end a little bit of time for your questions, your input, and to discuss a little bit. Yeah, cool. So. What I've been doing since the beginning of this year, I've been giving seminars, webinars, paid and not paid alike to typical, let's say, managers or people that want to explore ChatGPT for their enterprise. And the start of for most of the people is by a little bit of a magic moment where people are firing up the ChatGPT interface for the very first time, look in how it works, type in a couple of sentences, and then text is magically being created that is surprisingly good to what you would like to have on the surface level. And it's mostly been a development that was kicked off by OpenAI in the late of 2022. Where they published the generative pre-trained transformer in version 3.5 with a fine-tuning on chat interaction. So GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer, which is that class of generative AI applications that takes an input and creates something out of the knowledge that this model was pre-trained on, to help you answer questions or create content. The beauty of that thing is that the interface is really simple. It is chat, and you can write in that chat thing anything you want. And never mind what you write in, this tool will always create something. If that's helping you or not is standing on a different page, but generally ChatGPT and GPT 3.5 always create something in terms of content for you. And when I was looking in my network at the late of 2022, I saw there a lot of very excited, positive response and excited people about using this technology, and of course also businesses. What it really does, like if we look at the broader picture, launching ChatGPT and having all this buzz around, was really that people started to think about use cases for that thing in their daily lives, in their daily businesses. It allowed us a little bit to dream of what our businesses could be like, that repetitive tasks that we are all fed up with can hopefully in the future be done by AI, and everything that goes into speeding up your workflow and focusing onto what you actually want to do as a human, and that's doing exciting tasks that are not always the same, where you need your brain, your creativity, and your expertise, rather than writing 15 no thank you emails a day. And that sparked somewhat of where people were trying out and were doing research on what impact this technology could have across a different side of businesses. People that have been in my webinars before probably recognize this image, even though it was published in March. It is still up to date, which is a nice little diagram that is showing the potential of AI across different industries. So when you look at this diagram you see here, it is 100% are all of the tasks that are in a certain company within a certain sector. And the dark blue, gray, and light blue colors tell you how the percentage of these tasks in these industries that could potentially see 0 to 10% of automation, so basically no automation at all, 10 to 49% of automation of the processes in these businesses that are in these sectors. So meaning you use AI as a complement to your existing workflows, to your existing processes and work, and where and the gray one, where you see a potential of more than 50% of the processes in an organization that could even be replaced by an automated version of AI. And we were talking earlier when not everybody was here about people being afraid that jobs are going to be taken away Well, in most of the cases, that is not really a concern you should have if you believe Goldman Sachs and their assessment over here. So we see a lot of physical labor type of industries like building, construction, installation, maintenance, production, where you have a lot of physical work where you are not doing any automation with generative AI. In production, we could talk about AI with robots and everything, but we're talking about generative automation with generative AI in this context here. You see, the more we go to the right, the more we see business areas where we see not a replacement, but a lot of where we are using AI as a complement to help us in our existing processes. So, for example, computer science programming. Our developers at the moment all use generative AI to at least get the start. I can't replace my developers with ChatGPT, because there's also things like quality, like integration, stuff where you actually need to use your expertise, your experience, that an AI model at the moment at least does not have yet. And then there's businesses that will see for a lot of tasks likely a replacement. But a lot of doesn't mean 100%, but we see here, for example, for office and administrative support industries and tasks in this area, we see about a 30% of the tasks in these things might be replaced by an AI or more than 50%. The example that I always give, even though that there's not even a lot of AI behind, is Calendly. Before we had Calendly, we had to schedule our meetings ourselves, or we had assistants that were scheduling meetings for us. Typical office and administrative support type of task. Now with Calendly, we basically just send a link around, or with Doodle, and we agree on a meeting, and it's picked. The best one is picked by some sort of automated response. That, of course, being not really a big AI component in there, but just to give you an idea about that. Legal document processing, you see here behind me, there's a lot of legal documents, because it happens to be that my girlfriend is a lawyer, and I can tell you there is a lot of very repetitive work about analyzing court rulings, legal documents, contracts, but also the law itself in that regard, to look into and where you have to do a lot of what we call research in that area. And there's also a lot of potential to at least semi-automate half them and a third to automate even fully. So there is quite a lot of people that were asking that were asked for that. To answer your question, Ryan, on the time frame of these projections, I think this projection was in the next 10 to 15 years. So something a little bit more long term than something that is actually today. But there was also, this was a bigger report by Goldman Sachs. I think it was something like 15 pages. It says that there are industries that are at the forefront, especially these industries where you have a large portion of these type of light bluish colors that already start doing a lot now. And this is more of a long-term scape where will also see at some point in time the laggards in installation and repair that will use in 10% of their business processes, maybe some sort of AI. So it was a little bit more of a long-term projection, but you see the start of it already now in your daily interactions. So then when we think about the potential of what this generative AI could do, we have to think about how is this going to be embedded and what exactly will it do in our business process. The seminar is called Streamlining Business Processes, and we'll get into that in a second. But first of all, when I talk to a lot of people in the enterprise, they start out with the premise that in the end, they will have their computer, and in their second monitor, they will have ChatGPT as some sort of a companion. Which is intriguing on the first place, but because it is a very easy to use interface, but it has some downsides. That when you say, okay, you have an organization of 100 or 1,000 people, you have challenges first on skilling people to use these tools in a way that helps actually your business in the way that you want. That is the buzzword that you always hear is called prompt engineering, which is not as easy as it sounds. Just as a side note, we also have a prompt engineering course for 2.5 hours that we offer once a month. And we have often in that we have discussions with the people if then in the end everybody will need to learn prompt engineering as a technique in the same way like they have to learn how to use Microsoft Word. Well, of course you can do that, but that doesn't really, or that is not really necessary, and it's also not the most efficient way of doing things. To get started with ChatGPT and the interface is easy, but the value of actually you want to, and you have something in the end that is reproducible. So if you want to create a prompt that answers or that triages your emails that you get from your customers or that auto responds to things, you want to be able that this is reproducible, that this follows your standards, your guidelines, and then you need to have something like a template that you have in your organization that is being used. And with a template, we are already getting our steps into the direction of automation. So think a little bit about that when you ask ChatGPT to write an answer to an email. When you ask it 3 times, you will get slightly different answers when you use the same prompt. Now think your customer support department has 5 people in it, and they all prompt a little bit differently. So you will have a variety of different answers, and then you have to kind of tame these wild answers and align them. In the end, you have not really gained a lot because you want to make sure your brand voice is on part, that you are saying giving everywhere the same cohesive answers and not. And that's a challenge when you would approach it by just give everybody a ChatGPT interface and you teach them prompt engineering. The second issue or the second challenge that we have is compliance and privacy. So OpenAI, ChatGPT, the ChatGPT interface that you see is on OpenAI servers in the United States and here in Europe. And if you put private data in, for example, data about your business, this is often a large compliance issue depending on how big your organization is and how strict your compliance rules are. But there are models that we can deploy in on-premise. For example, Llama 2, LangChain was mentioned earlier. It's also one of them. And since a couple of weeks, there's also the possibility to get your own copy of an OpenAI instance in your Microsoft Azure tenant. Microsoft Azure has invested a big stake in OpenAI, so they're trying to, of course, tie that into that ecosystem as much as they can. And you can have your own private ChatGPT when GPT 3.5 instance in your own Microsoft subscription without data being transferred anywhere else. And then when you have something like that, of course, it also is a challenge in terms of data and systems integration. So you might want to teach a large language model to know your company knowledge in parentheses and give an LLM access to what you know as a subject matter expert in your company. And then you have the challenge of a landscape of different existing IT infrastructure. You have organizations, you have stuff like role management, group management, user management, different databases, data warehouses, pre-processing, and all of that comes together. And combining these things is really what makes enterprise AI different from just giving everybody a ChatGPT interface and calling it a day. And then is the question, of course, how do we handle that? And this webinar is called Streamlining Business Processes. So let's look into business processes. I give you here an example of a person named JC. And Jay-Z is a content creator for a pharma company, a fictional pharma company, of course, called Good Pill Inc. Jay-Z has the task from her manager that she gets every week an assignment to write on a specific topic with a specific goal. And so she gets a subject, for example, a new pill that this company produced, and she wants to create educational content and package the same content basically into different representations. For example, in a blog post that she can have in their internal knowledge base, and or into a shorter LinkedIn page for their customers that don't have really deep subject matter expertise. At the same point, you have a company newsletter, and they also want that they have short briefings on specific topics that come up that you can do basically while you're already looking at creating this other content. And Good Pill Inc. also has a training center, for their sales representatives. And it would be very good if they could generate questions and already teach people in an interactive way with that example over here. Now, when you think about how the process looks like, there is a model of that process in a business process modeling language called BPMN. Where the process looks like that she gets material from a subject matter expert, and then she has to write a base article about it. And from that base article, she has to make basically in parallel small spin-offs, like a shorter LinkedIn post, these 3 shorts to include in their newsletter, and the exercise for the training curriculum. In the end, she has to take all of these different pieces of content, schedule it where they need to be published, and publish it on time. That's basically her task. When we think about everything that she is doing in a week, she gets a new topic every week. What she's doing is basically always the same, but kind of different. Let me explain that. Basically, when we talk about a business process model like this, it's a blueprint for many different instances of that process. Different instances have different inputs to this process. For example, here the topic to write about, and different outputs, of course. When we create this in this new instance of a process, then it becomes an actual execution of a process, and the tasks that and the different steps that we have in a process, they get their inputs and produce their output. And when we think about that task, really, we have basically always the same kind of mental model that we have behind it. We have, first of all, for example, here, create a short LinkedIn post around a certain topic. We always have somewhere an input. For example, let's say the medical definition of the pharmaceutical definition of a new product like that Good Pill Inc. is producing. That is the input that you have. Then you have to do sometimes, but sometimes not, to transform this into a different form. For example, if that thing is really too complex and and requires too much subject matter expertise, then Jay-Z needs to understand the concepts behind, transform it into something where she can actually work with if she's not a pharmaceutical expert. In the middle is the actual content generation / transformation, where a new piece of content is created, for example, with generative AI. And in the end, you transform that in the way that you want it. For example, you say, okay, make it a little bit more fun, add some emojis, put it into a form that you have maximum 128 characters so that it fits in my tweet, and put it in there. So that little bonbon looking like candy that you have here is always, you always have that in some form or extent. And when you think about that as our mind model, we can create ourselves a good outline on how to do these things with generative AI, because they basically follow the same principle. You have an input, for example, in that case here, the long text on that new pill that I called Heartbeat Wizard. You extract this text from a PDF. That's an input transformation. You create a shorter LinkedIn article with text that has a little bit less complex vocabulary. You transform it in a professional but easy to understand tone and voice that you can put the output in the end in a LinkedIn article in text form, so you can show it to your followers, to your customers, and to everything that is happening around you. And when we think about this process and how to implement this process, I would like to show you something that we have been working on in the meantime. So I have shown you initially the ChatGPT interface, and I would like to show you here a process modeling tool with generative AI that is called entAIngine that our company is developing at the moment. And I would like to show you this example over here. In an application that I call educational content helper. We can in entAIngine Studio, that's the software that we have developed here. We can, with a no-code interface, develop very complex prompting and generative AI workflows. There is a very unexciting user interface where you can define how your application in the end looks like, because your application is auto-generated. But the important thing, and that's where I'm circling back to business processes, is this view where we have in an application where we're using generative AI, we have always different processes. For example, this creation of this LinkedIn article from an input. I show you here an input. This is the product specification sheet of Heartbeat Wizard. Of course, a fictional product, but actually very close to one of the projects that we have with one of our customers right now, but I'm not supposed to disclose anybody. So this here is a product sheet that you see for usual pharmaceuticals. About indications, contraindications, dosage, things that you have to keep in mind, different adverse reactions and stuff like storing and handling conditions. So that's a product sheet. Of course, your product sheets of your heart medicines might look a little bit different. So this is just a simple example. And what we are doing basically in this interface is we have here a process that has two different prompts and takes an input and creates one output. And let me show you how that works. This thing here basically says we have here a task completion that uses ChatGPT and the GPT 3.5 Turbo with the following prompt. And the prompt is, when you do some prompt engineering in a bit more elaborate way, you can write prompts like this, where I'm saying, okay, I am an educational content creator for a large pharma company, and I got input from a subject matter expert, and I have to create different types of content behind it. We're defining languages, tones, style, and methodologies, and formatting guidelines. In the end, we say our instruction, what we have said. With that said, I have here the following document describing my new pharmaceutical product. And that's basically a variable that we are filling every week in a different way. In every new instance of the process, this is a different document. Maybe this week on JC's agenda is Heartbeat Wizard. Maybe next time it will be a thyroid medication or something else. We want to create a LinkedIn post for it that should be short and concise and target people without any subject matter expertise. This is our first prompt. We are creating the output, and then before we are showing it to the user, we are making a second prompt, where we say, give me 4 hashtags and add them to my post so that I have it in here. What this thing here really is, it is a process with inputs, with outputs, and with a process flow that we can define. entAIngine has a business process engine behind it where you can create these things here as templates and store them and automatically create a live application for them where your end users will use it. So this here is that create LinkedIn article use case that I've shown you. And you see here basically, you only have to upload a document. And we are uploading here heartbeat wizard, and we are pressing generate. This is the interface that in the end an end user like JC has to use. And that is much more easy than creating long, complex prompt flows. For a skill where she probably first needs to get trained anyhow. So that is really our learning that I had over the time from using or for getting into enterprise. It's really creating these templates, getting these integrated in your existing business processes, and having an easy to use interface. Then you don't have to really teach anybody prompt engineering. It's for them just a new tool and about the integration to their day-to-day life. And for that, you see here, that's what our engine just created live. Exciting news on the cardiovascular medicine, introducing heartbeat wizard, the latest breakthrough in cardio selective treatment, designed to tackle hypertension and a lot of different other things. You have here something that you can post on your LinkedIn site. But on the other hand, let's look into the other things, because we had with JC also the challenge to create questions from a product sheet. And that's just a different process that we have to define. So we are again writing a very long prompt, and in the end say, create 3 multiple choice questions about what I can insert into our training system to train our sales reps. Each question should have 4 answers, make these answers correct. And then we have a bunch of context over here. That's a little bit more simple process that only has 1 step, but you can think about very large and very complex processes that have many steps that are in the end, when you model it with templates, are reproducible. You click here again on Live App, and you look into create this these questions from a product sheet. And I'm uploading here Heartbeat Wizard again. You will see that the output or the input is again the same. The end user doesn't need to do any prompting, it doesn't need to learn prompt engineering, doesn't need to create something for them, but they just use this thing with an easy interface and get in the end the output. So what is the active ingredient in Heartbeat Wizard? Beta low, alpha low, cardio, or wizardol. And that is here, of course, this answer number C. And it creates these things that you put in a training tool also. And the idea that you have is that every time you want to really help your business process with AI, you have to think about the execution of something that AI does as a business process itself. That might have different steps, that might have different inputs, it has different outputs, take things from somewhere and put it somewhere in a way that is reproducible and also, of course, compliant to your existing processes. And that helps, lets me into my next point about the architecture for these type of things. We have talked about not what you have seen, but what you've seen in the very beginning, that ChatGPT interface. The user puts the input into the user interface and gets an output that comes from OpenAI's backend, from OpenAI's infrastructure directly to the user interface. There's no man in between, but you are also interacting. Has the thing that all of the inputting of something it has to be done by a user. The data processing is not happening on the user's machine or in the user's interface, but on OpenAI's infrastructure, which has for enterprise, of course, these implications regarding compliance, regarding governance, data privacy, but also regarding reproducibility. When you think about, so there's other ways of how you can do it. There's a ChatGPT API or an OpenAI API that you can use and call from your own backend. And when we look into how architectures like that could be, when we have now a middle layer that is hosted by your company, we can generally integrate into existing enterprise systems. For example, get into our whole product database and automatically retrieve Heartbeat Wizard's specification and put that as an input automatically without Jason having to go around and ask who has the product sheet of Heartbeat Wizard. In the end, how it's being processed is the same way. So it's on OpenAI's infrastructure and being just forwarded back to the backend that shows it then to user. It's now one step better. We have reproducibility and we have data pipelines, but we have the same issues on that data leaves your premises. And that is what, in my opinion, the reference implementation or the reference architecture of a serious enterprise level large language model process should look like, is that you have your interface that can be really anything. You have your own backend, you ingest data from your own systems, but you have an on-premise model that lives only with you. There are on-premise models out there. I was touching about that earlier. For example, Llama 2, that is the ChatGPT of Meta, so Facebook. That is offered completely open source. You just have to orchestrate it, put it in your system, and integrate your processes into them. There's also OpenAI in Azure right now, where you can have your own dedicated instance of OpenAI in your Azure tenant, which is also decoupled from the public OpenAI computing infrastructure that you have. And with that, you have really all the ingredients for an enterprise system, because it's like another piece of software that you put into your existing processes. And just here as a little bit of an outlook on if people are interested in what entAIngine is doing. Ryan, I saw your question. entAIngine is basically a piece of software that lives in your infrastructure and orchestrates these processes, is integrating different models, and is letting us execute them many times. It also has a level of storing data. And for that example that I've just shown you, this uploading of the data was not even done in any vector database or anything. It was just in a blob in a bucket, and was fed in as context to the prompt. Because with GPT-3, GPT-4, you can add up to 32,000 tokens of input context to a certain prompt, which helps if you have a 15-page document that you want to feed in, but it doesn't help you if you have your whole company knowledge of thousands of documents and thousands of different stores. Then it doesn't help you in the 32,000 token content limitations. We have in entAIngine an embeddings module, just to answer that question a little bit more, where we are representing these models, all these documents in embeddings, then make a similarity search, and then select basically the context that is important for your current business process, and just in that way. In that way, you can tackle all of your enterprise hive mind and tangle it into very specific instances of the business process. And with that, we basically covered, we have something reproducible when we think about it in that way, because we think of it as templates. So there needs probably to be some sort of task force that is creating these applications within the company, but not every employee has to know prompt engineering. When you have these templates, you are good at prompt engineering, you also restrict how wild the answers could be if you do good prompt engineering. With on-premise models, you have compliance and privacy, and with integrating into enterprise systems and into the enterprise user management, you have also that really enterprise-grade level that you would like to have. And we are working on projects like that, and they usually go through different phases. You don't need me to do these phases, but you can also do it by yourself. But if you'd like to talk later, maybe if you need some help, we're more than happy to help. But the high-level process that we always advise is first look in your current day-to-day business process. Don't start with the technology. Start with the problems that you have today, and then select the processes that you could generally some possibility to use OpenAI. Sorry, not OpenAI, generative AI in general. model this process, translate it into prompts, and try it out in isolation. We are using entAIngine to try that out, to define these processes, because it's quick and easy and you can validate very quickly. But in the end, you have to make a decision if that thing is viable, if what you did with that generative AI model is helping you in your day-to-day life or not. And then afterwards comes the productized phase, where you think, okay, you have a work and prototype, but you want to integrate it into your existing enterprise workflows, with your enterprise systems, your databases, and your user management. And that's then the next phase before you launch a productive, production-ready product into your organization end-to-end and monitoring. And yeah, that's basically the innovation process that I always advise. We do that innovation process ourselves when we work together with customers, and one of them here, just as an outlook, is what we call the Enterprise Gen AI Jumpstart, which is more of a consulting and prototyping thing that we are doing together with a bunch of different customers at the moment, which is an 8-week program where we take you by the hands. We are using our tool. We are looking into your processes, and we try out and look if these things that you would like to do are actually viable. We can use many different models. We talked just about generative text, but we have also integrators to speech and pieces and to generative images. And it's really a nice thing where we're working in an 8-week combined, condensed version. And you have fully custom application where you can really later see, okay, that thing works for me. I would like to roll it out. Let's take the next steps, or maybe also it wasn't viable. The second thing that we are doing, or how we are working with companies together, is a weekly support partner program where we are working as a sparring partner with other companies that just needs a little bit taken by the hand without being in a complete 8-week program on that matter. And so that's here as a little bit of an ad in the end. We do these free webinars because we believe in educating people about the context here. It's helping us and it's helping our economy. But also, if you would like to work with us, just shoot us an email, add us on LinkedIn. And with that, I would like to close here and open for questions that you in the audience may or may not have. Guido, did you see any questions?
Not so far, but feel free to ask them. I will end the recording now, so feel free, be assured that every question doesn't leave the Zoom meeting room.